YouTube, Awesome Rider here, coming at you with my review for Kamen Rider Gotchard Episode 11. Yes, I know I am still covering it. You know, like I said, I was going to feel it out just in general because I was starting Rider content slowly, whether I would cover it regularly. And to be honest, most people don't seem to care about these videos or Rider content all that much. Like, I get a lot of requests for it, but then when I do it, it seems like not a lot of people are watching it. But I'm going to try to build up the numbers a little bit. But anyway, I was going to give it till around episode 10 because obviously I wasn't that into the show, but as I said last week, I don't want to stop watching it because the idea of having to binge it sounds like sheer torture. And I wanted to see if stuff starts happening. So it just seemed funnily coincidental that right when I decided to stop potential regular coverage, stuff actually seems to be happening. So I'm going to stick it out for a little bit longer and see what happens. Like I said, I will still cover the series overall, whether it's in chunks and a series review, but I figured let's see these couple episodes out and see what Gotchard has. And as people have pointed out, my Gotchard reviews are often repetitive, like this was okay, the form is okay, Hotaro's trash, send him into the fire, all that stuff. I'm going to try to keep this review different. I'm going to try to talk about only things that are different, because there was some different stuff happening. I mean, just to get it out of the way, though, Hotaro was absolutely obnoxious in this episode, especially the last it's like literally the worst person. So I have to use this to vent, guys. This was the first episode in a while where it feels like there's actual stuff happening. Probably the first episode since the pilot that we've had a significant amount of story set up. There's nothing necessarily that's like gripping me like I'm super invested in the story, but I'm admittedly curious because of how little has gone on, what they're going to do that will potentially invest me. And I hope that they will, because like I said, I'm not going to stop watching it because I want to complete it, but there has to be something to keep me coming back. Villains, to be fair, have been kind of having this plan working up in the background, which is going to lead to Kamen Rider Dread, and there is a bit of momentum on that, and we do have both the heroes and the villains going after the UFO Chemy, which was set up last week, so a little bit of credit there for them setting that up. And I just recorded my video talking about the new forms, which should have already gone out by now according to the timeline, the sacred timeline. So a little bit of credit there for a little bit of setup for Kamen Rider Dread and the UFO form. Although, as I said in that video, it was funny having these two Gold Dash forms, you know, because we got another new form in this, that are more like kind of different looking than the main forms and feel like they could have been a super form with a story. And it was weird that we're just, as usual, like debuting these as a throwaway when we're spending all this time building up UFO, and I'm like, this feels like this should have been the story for this form. But anyway, you do have that going on. And also, as a side note, at the beginning of the episode, before I forget, they're all hunting down Chemys. And first of all, that blue one was totally the stag phone from Kamen Rider Double, right? That was a throwback. I do kind of miss the gadgets. You know, we do get stuff like smartphone, and every year has a smartphone that may or may not transform into a creature. But I do kind of miss the little stuff like food droids. Those were kind of fun, you know. Anyway, I only wanted to highlight that for that reason. But also, I'm really curious how Chemys are working out for like the franchise in terms of sales and stuff. Or even just, you know, other fans like myself. Like, I like the concept. I own some of the cards. They look cool. I like the concept. But I feel like the show's not doing enough to, like, make you invested in them, where it would be really exciting to collect them. The only ones that have personality is Hopper, Smartphone, and then technically Cactus. But I'm really curious how it's working out. Because obviously every year they want the gimmick to be successful. But this really feels like they're trying to manufacture a hit, and it just isn't working. Probably one of the most significant things we have happen here that's different is we have an inspector arriving to like inspect the academy, and he's observing Gotchard's fight at the beginning, and he shows up and does that very classic generic thing where you have an authority figure come by and say like, oh, the main character isn't worthy and you're fired or whatever. And typically, I'm always on the side of the protagonist. Like, you idiot, you don't even know what you're talking about, coming here trying to take everything away from our heroes, and this time I'm like, yes, fire him, actually just prune him, get rid of him completely, I support this, do everything terrible to this man. To be fair, though, he was talking about when he was watching Gotchard's fight, how he was sloppy, and admittedly, he was rapid-firing a bunch of the Final Form Ride-esque forms, but I actually felt he was being fairly strategic, maybe a little bit chaotic, but he was doing pretty well in that fight, in my opinion, and was able to get himself out of a couple sticky situations by rapid-firing those forms. So, I was like, I do hate Gotchard and wish you would get rid of him, but in this case, you are kind of wrong, at least in my opinion. Maybe I was reading that fight all wrong. There is a thing about how they're saying, oh, there's a spy in the midst, and then he tells them that he's investigating a spy. I feel like you might want to play that close to the chest so that the spy's not like, oh, I better tighten up my cover. We also have a very brief scene of the young villain, that's a kid, confronting Rin and teasing that like, oh, you're gonna be to blame for all of this, and then that scene is cut off by Valivard protecting her, which was really annoying because we previously had a scene between them, and I was hoping to get a little bit more hints at what's going on there, and Valivard like just immediately put the kibosh on that. The other major thing happening was, which is tied into, you know, the Inspector, is there is a monster of the week that they keep fighting, and we find out it was actually like his assistant lady or fellow inspector lady, who I guess seems to be using some sort of forbidden form of alchemy. It was a pretty good twist, kind of expected as they telegraphed it at the end, but it was just really nice to have other stuff going on. Like, for the most part, Gotchard has just been, you know, Hotaro being like, Chemy! And then, like, the villains being like, wow, we're villains and stuff like that. So it's been pretty generic. So adding in this third factor of alchemy, like, review board or whatever, and then them being possibly corrupt, not to mention Kamen Rider Dread came in, feels like there's a lot more things going on, which is kind of nice. Other nice little side note is it does feel like some of the other cast members are still getting involved. I'm still very curious to see in the future if Glasses Guy is going to prove that he needs to be in the show at all, because he just pops up and is like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. I'm like, me too, I forgot who you were again. The other two, like, Academy students were involved a little more this week, and I forgot to mention last week, it was kind of nice to see them also helping in the fight. I do like seeing the other alchemy students get involved, but you have a little bit more personality with them. It seems like the one with the computer is kind of worshipping Hotaro, which is annoying, but at least they're a little bit more involved, as I feel like I almost forget about them more than Glasses Guy. But this episode was actually one of the stronger ones of the series. I felt like structure-wise, it felt a little weird. It felt really jumbled, like there were so many things going on from scene to scene. It felt like they had a checklist of things they needed to get done. And as I said at the top of the review, I'm not invested in terms of like, oh, what's this mystery, what's that mystery, like, but I am noticing like now they are starting to lay down more stuff happening. So like I said, I want to cover it and talk it through to see what Gotchard's got going. I can't foresee them turning around any of the characters at this point, but at least they could maybe bring up some story stuff that will leave it at least somewhat worth my time each week. And so I'm glad that there's finally some stuff that seems to be happening. But what did you guys think? Did you think this was a bit of a turnaround for Gotchard, or at least a little bit of a good sign, or are you still thinking it's looking bad? It's not looking great, but I felt like it would have been funny to be like, well, I guess I'll stop covering it before things happen. Like, I am curious to see, I hate to use this phrasing, what they have cooking. But let me know what you think in the comments as always, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.